It's not that I didn't want to do it. It's a case of where I felt I like working with people where we have mutual respect and we have a lot in common. I first saw Elvis appear on the Ed Sullivan Show with basically his original trio, with Scotty Moore as guitarist and DJ Fontana as drummer. And I loved seeing him on that. It was pure rock and roll to me. And, I was noticing a lot of the publicity that was going on with the RCA record publicity machine, Colonel Parker's hype about Elvis, and the industry really tuning into him. But I was a West Coast guy. I mean, I was, at the time, my partner, Bones Howe, and I were producing exclusively all the hit records for the Fifth Dimension, the Association. We're working, at the time, Bones was working with Lord Nero. And so I just felt we had nothing in common. Well, what happened was, before I even had to make a decision, I had finished doing two other specials, one with the star of Hallelujah Baby on Broadway, Leslie Uggams, television series with Mitch Miller, where you sort of follow the bouncing ball, and the audience at home could sing along with the Mitch Miller choir. And then I had done a special for Petula Clark, with Harry Belafonte as her only guest star. And that,
I hear they touched.
That was a huge explosion.
Huge.
Well, it was picked up by Time Magazine and Newsweek as it was one of the very first variety shows that ever had a black artist and a white artist touching each other. And all it was Petula getting very emotional on an anti-war song called Paths of Glory, and she reached out and touched Harry's forearm. And unfortunately, the sponsor's representative, who was assigned to cover the show, we had a confrontation even before I started taping the show where I was told he didn't want any black people on the show. And I was able to win that battle and keep Harry on the show. But he was at NBC at the time in the sponsor's green room, and once he saw Petula touch Harry, he just threw a fit and stormed out of NBC and said, "We have to get that out of the show. We're never going to show it to America." And here I shot the show like a film, with basically on one or two cameras without an audience there, and I could do multiple takes. But what happened was, Harry looked at her, she looked at him, and all of a sudden tears started down Petula's face, and the emotions took over. So that was when she reached out and touched him. And so what I did when I heard the sponsor saying that they're never going to see this on television, I immediately went down to the basement of NBC where all the recording tapes were in the recording machines. And I ordered the editor to erase all the other takes. So the only choice left for NBC was to air the touch. And, and that was just by instinct,
But you did it.
But I couldn't believe that, racism was such a big thing.
That could have been more of a comeback for Elvis than just a special on TV. He came back to life, kind of pulled him out of his limbo.
I asked him to go out on Sunset Boulevard where my offices were at the time. And he said, "What do you think will happen?" I said, "I don't think anything will happen." I said, first of all, it's 1968. I think kids are a lot more sophisticated today than they were before. And I think, they'd be polite. They wouldn't tear your clothes off. So 2 days went by. And one day he comes to the office. He used to come at 4 in the afternoon and said, "Okay, let's go." And I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "I'm going to take you up on what you told me. Let's go down on Sunset Boulevard." Nothing happened, to the point of almost embarrassment. He was trying to bring attention to himself, and nobody paid attention. What I never told him was, "Nobody knows you're here, Elvis. They think you're in Memphis. There's so many guys running around Hollywood trying to look like you."
Elvis. The design of the '68 special
came from a guy named Gene McAvoy, who I'm still very close to. I worked with Gene on Hullabaloo for NBC, and most of my team, especially in those years, all came from other shows that I was connected with, and I'd sort of picked them out of the pack and say, I want to keep working with you. The trick to being a really good director or producer is surrounding yourself with super talented people, and then you work as a team in developing the concept and the format. And I've been blessed with, everything I've learned in this business. I can honestly say I've come from my crew, not the executives. I wanted to bring cameras into the dressing room, and the Colonel, that was his last stand. He wouldn't let me take a camera in there. And I just kept on top of him every minute saying, I got to bring cameras in there, because I knew with all the money we're spending on dancers and singers and extras and what have you, nothing compared to what I was watching in his dressing room every night. So, and sometimes, he'd finish rehearsals at 7 in the evening, go in there, have a bite to eat, and then jam until 2, 3 in the morning, I kept hounding the Colonel, and finally, out of the blue, the Colonel said, okay, Bindle, that was his favorite name for me when he didn't like me. And he said, I'll let you recreate it on stage if you want to. And I jumped on it. We didn't have any more money in the budget, so I used the same set that he was in the black leather singing his old hit songs with the Wrecking Crew orchestra. The Colonel did everything in his power to sabotage the segment. I mean,
really?
Yeah. And there's a great story in my book about him promising to fly an airplane in Elvis fans from Memphis with the blonde, hairdos and the blue eyes and everything. And, and he never had any intentions of doing any of that. But we gave him all the audience tickets thinking maybe he'll come through. And the next day when we're getting ready to actually tape it, there wasn't any audience to watch it. So we were going to Bob's Big Boy restaurant in the Valley asking if they wanted to come see Elvis. We had a couple local disc jockeys going on the air saying, if you want to see Elvis, head out to NBC Burbank as soon as possible. And we, scrounged up an audience for those improv segments.
And now the audience is almost as entertaining as Elvis.
He came back to life. You kind of pulled him out of his limbo.
Well, he asked me the first time I met him, what'll happen if the special fails? And I said, well, you'll still remembered for your movies, for your early hits, but I think your career probably will be over at that point. And he said, and what if it's successful? I said, every door is going to be open to you again, which is exactly what happened.